Hey guys, it's been some time since I've released a video. Things have been a little bit busy on the academy front as we finally managed to squeak out the last few wins to qualify for the Proving Grounds tournament that will be happening in April as we finish 5 and 4 after a single best of one round robin in the NA Academy 2021 spring. Now, this is the 5-4 recap as we cover the topic of performance versus learning and how these two things measure up as we prepare to go into each week. And this video topic was kind of inspired by a discussion that happened on Hotline League, where Kelsey Moser went on to a call to answer some of the questions and talk about how the current Tier 2 system doesn't necessarily benefit the development of players. Talking about and challenging the notion that stage games are better than scrims and stage games are better than development. And there was a rather compelling argument that optimizing for the win is counterproductive to development. Now, she went on to say that her favorite part of the season, while she was the head coach of the 100 Thieves Academy team, was the lead up to the season itself and the 2 week break during Rift Rivals, as this bought them a lot of time to really go in and say that we're just going to focus on spending this entire week learning specific concepts. Whereas while you had the regular season going on, you would only be able to afford a maximum of up to 2 days per week that can be dedicated to development. And this is something that I echo and experience as well as we manage this 5 short weeks of spring academy regular season. Now, this sentiment was echoed by Spawn as well, where he is the coach of the second place Team Liquid Academy, who finished in the second place in the standings for spring. And he said that you have to be willing to lose games to pursue improvement. Now, this is a lot easier for them to do as they started off 4 and 0 after the first 2 weeks. But regardless of that, it is about finding performance and comfort against the notion of development, which requires you to push players to expand their boundaries and experiment with different things. So, starting off where we last left off as of the last video, we were at the first week of Academy with two wins, one over 100 Thieves Academy and one over Golden Gardens Academy. We just were rounding up the lock-in tournament. Has become a few losses in that, and Seraphine was starting to become a thing within the NA scrim meta as a whole. We very quickly decided that we did not want to play with this champion, be it us picking it up or us laying the counters to it, as we expected some nerfs to come in the direction, and learning the playstyle where we just left bar around her and let the strengths of Seraphine carry us to victory was not necessarily the approach of improvement that we wanted. But due to the scheduled lock-in tournament, we were only able to afford 1 day of scrims, and considering that Seraphine was going to be part of the meta, we decided to spend some time picking up the Twist of Fate type of style of pick compositions, which we felt was a decent answer. That you could kite the Seraphine compositions that wanted to stick us a death ball of 5 around the map, pick them apart slowly, and then hit them when they're weak when they're answering the side lanes if possible. Now, our arsenal would then be our Drake stacking composition to be played mostly throughout the lock-in tournament, which focus on going for all in zone control. And then if within this 1 day of scrims that we effectively had before we were to play our next matches on stage, we tried to pick up this fate. Now, if I were to score us in terms of where I felt the performance was, I would give our all in zone control Drake stacking kind of approach towards the game a B grade. This is about average from what I see what most pro teams would be able to execute on. We tick off most of the boxes in terms of getting the setup right, being able to set out the weak side, bridge for the weak side, and then play into the strong side. We're not extending on waves that we shouldn't be going for. And some of the general ideas of how to play in the all-in zone control, I would say it's there. But the big compositions, this is where it's a D plus, but I would say it's a conditional pass, right? Where we show that we understand the rough ideas of how to play those specific composition, but when it comes to executing the key concepts, we're not there yet. And thus, I can't give us a higher grade when it comes to executing that. And with this level of play, we ended up with a loss against EVA Juniors Academy and a win against CLG Academy. So currently we're 3-1 with two big games against Team Liquid Academy and Cloud9 Academy going to be happening in the next week. Now with a full 4 days, right? So 7 days in a week, 2 days for matches, and then 4 days of training and with one off day. This is how we kind of broke down each day itself. And on Saturday we call it test day, where players would then bring ideas up and say that, and we can sort of like workshop and brainstorm ideas as a whole to say this is what I've been playing in solo queue. Maybe we felt that say Yumi was could be strong on this patch whatsoever. Then Saturdays where we workshop some of these ideas and we test things out to see if what they're doing in solo queue can be translated into a competitive environment. Sunday we then focus on concept development. In this case, we wanted to work a little bit more on the big composition side of things. And on a Monday, then we start to decide, okay, this is a scouting report. This is how TLA plays. This is how C9A plays. This is a strategy that we want to use against them. And Tuesday, the day before the matches itself, this is rehearsal day where we try to simulate match settings and we say that this is the drafts that we want to be running against them. These are the champions that we will be playing, and this is the game plan that we want to be executing as much as possible. And with that, we decided to go with a kite and re-engage kind of Drake stacking composition with with Azir and Udyr. So keep in mind this is 11.3 as well, which is why the test day was important for us to figure out, okay, Udyr is being played by all these players all around the world. Let's pick up this jungler, see how this goes, right? And we decided against Cloud9, this is a team that like to play 1-3-1 quite a fair bit. We felt that if we were to pick up the Camille and Gallo, it would be a rather effective answer towards them. But still, our understanding when it comes to these topics as a whole, I would say our Drake stacking improved a little bit as we now understood, okay, we can also approach Drake stacking in a different way. We can play Drake stacking with Azir. We don't necessarily always have to be going into them. We can always be starting a Drake, pulling out to one side, and then kiting our opponents through the choke rather than pouncing on them the moment they step into our zone control of sorts. Whereas the Gallo Camille, we spent the whole Sunday working on these big compositions, but ultimately the execution was still lacking. And when it came to forcing the dive on the side lanes, coordinating the Rift Herald play, making sure that opponents were not able to pick up the wave steal, there was lots of small micro errors that we had in the game against Cloud9. And I think that this is where things started to get really messy, right? Because we didn't have the opportunity to really lay out the fundamentals and have a solid understanding. Everything was about how do we patchwork something together. We felt that big compositions would be good against these teams, so let's try to get a big composition going rather than trying to learn things from ground up and saying that this is the ABCs of how you execute a Twisted Fate composition. This is the ABCs of how you play with Gatler Camille, and then building on understanding from there. So we saw some opportunities to adapt to certain scenarios, like the Drake fight against Cloud9, but the team wasn't on the same page. We went in the comms coming out base for saying that let's play for 1-3-1, let's enable the Camille to farm, but we saw them being slow on the dragon. We decided to go in for the engage, but the rest of the team wasn't able to follow up the same page because what we needed to do is adapt into a 0-3-2 or 0-2-3 where we pincer them from both sides with the Maokai ulti as well. But the rest of the team wasn't able to follow up and didn't understand the adaptation that was being made in the call itself, and that kind of ended up in disaster. And with that, we lose and go 0-2 to both Team Liquid and Cloud9. And this is where at 3-3 things start to look a little bit bad for us because previously where we could test concepts and try to understand and say, okay, let's learn how to play big compositions, here we were put to the X of sorts, and we needed to think about, right, big compositions, our understanding of it is just about a C grade, not really there yet. We are still making these mistakes all over the place. For the next week, we kind of have to make sure that we are earning the wins, at least one, if not both, to guarantee our qualification to the Proving Grounds tournament itself. And as such, we had to decide that, okay, we are not progressing as quickly as we would like when it comes to big compositions. So let's kind of like cut this out and then we just focus on our one core strength, which is the Drake stacking composition. Now moving on to the last few weeks, once again, test day, concept development, strategy selection, and rehearsal. Same kind of practice structure. 2 days to really develop on concepts, and then 2 days to really refine down to the nitty gritty of what's being drafted and the exact champions that are being played. So new batch once again 11.3. But at this point of time, the damage had been done, right? Because the player's confidence has been shaken of sorts, and there's all these conflicting concepts. And when do we play on 3 lanes? When do we play on 2 lanes? When do we play on 1 lane? Right? When we were first playing Drake stacking at the start of everything, it was very simple. We knew what we had to do from minute one all the way to the end, and then we tried to expand our repertoire a little bit, expand the number of options that we had, and then this resulted in what we call analysis paralysis, where we look in the game and now we see all these different options, but because we see all these different options, the synchronicity of what we used to have in terms of, okay, we've got two options, right? Either we do the drink or we give the drink. Now we can think about, okay, we can play the cross map, we can play to trap them, we can play to flank them, we can play to pick them, and then play on 2 lanes on the bottom side of the map, and then try to pick them off as they come in and contest our vision rather than starting a Drake on spawn. there was all these different ideas that we had developed in the previous few weeks, and it came to a point where once again it came down to communication and the lack of fundamentals really being there in terms of like having this universal dictionary that people can use all these shortened terms to easily communicate to their teammates. So as such, against Dignitas Academy, we played at comfort once again. We played for Drake stacking. We were first in the trap zone. We failed to hold it. We went in there. We were calling, watch the choke. Opponents didn't walk in. All of a sudden, we see Azir step up in the mid lane. We lose our minds. We rush at the Azir. And then from there, the rest is history. We lose against Dignitas. TSM Academy, this is something that we have been working on a little bit as well. When we were playing the specific compositions, how do we bridge for the weak side properly to deal with the one true composition the TSM Academy was playing against us. They were playing the likes of Twisted Fate, and they're trying to split push us and play very aggressively to pick on two lanes as well. And there were all sorts of mistakes that we were making in terms of making sure that our defensive players were in position. Thankfully, there was some clutch Leona engages for us to get back into the game. And all of this was further compounded by the players because we had lost 3 games in the last 2 weeks. They were so eager to compensate for the mistakes that we were making, which resulted in small individual micro errors. And this wasn't just on stage itself, it was happening in scrims, and it was over reducing the quality of practice that we were having. And these issues continued to spill over into the next week as well. Despite the win that we had over TSM, it's a small, nice morale boost, but now we were in a win and scenario as we rode the edge of the bubble as we went into FlyQuest in the final week. So we knew that Triple was a big Azir player. Triple is the mid laner for FlyQuest Academy, and Azir is one of Pretty's best champions as well. So we spent the week once again, instead of doing the whole task concept development thing, it's just about Azir. How do you draft the dream ideal Azir composition? And what are the possible answers to dealing with Azir? So this is once again 11.3. Verdant Barrier seems to be a really strong item. How can you possibly deal with what seems to be the new boogeyman of the meta, right? And this week, once again, with all the compounding problems coming in, we actually lost every scrim set. By the end of the day, we were able to visualize how we wanted to execute the gameplay, the game plan, and we were able to pull off the win against FlyQuest Academy. Now, as to where we are currently, performance-wise, I don't think we have achieved all the much development in terms of where we are at right now as Immortals Academy. So let's think a little bit about how do we get here, right? There was some challenges that we had with the players coming in late. There was a lack of proper build-up. We didn't have the key build-up season of 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks. That's usually essential to building up for a season in itself, and we couldn't really afford to, as Swan said, lose games, right? Because of how high stakes a single round robin best of one is in this particular format. And thus we were forced to pursue performance without laying fundamentals that resulted in these issues where our champion pool shrunk, people were trying to compensate for mistakes, and it was overall a rather difficult time for the team as a whole. But now that we have qualified for Proving Grounds itself, we have about six weeks to really figure things out and get the launcher list together. So this is a rough idea of what's next for the Immortals Academy team. Now, there's 3 big topics that we're looking at. The first is a culture reset, because we didn't have to build up, we didn't have the chance to really sit the players down and say that this is what we stand for, this is the values. I mean, we can say these things, right? But to really put it into actionable actions and to show them that this is what it means to be a teammate to somebody else. These are things that we want to be doing. Building fundamentals in the knowledge domain once again. And then working on health and performance. There was some focus issues that we were having, some choking issues that we had on stage, like players playing too eager in 1 week, and then as a result of that, they played scared, and then they lost their minds in the following week as well. So in terms of culture, it's about enabling players to empower each other. We want to establish a sense of camaraderie, and we want to establish a problem solving mindset versus a threat response, the usual fight or flight the moment something goes wrong, right? And this is what we want to tackle in terms of culture. And this is the type of things that you would need to do with team activities, right? Be it providing insight sessions, be it going for walks as a team or doing team activities at this point of time to sort of build some form of gelling, build some form of common experiences that teammates can then try to use to relate to each other better outside of simply being colleagues and just scrimming day in, day out of sorts. When it comes to fundamentals, then this is where it's a chance for us to do a reset, right? Go back, 3 weeks. 1 week on big compositions, 1 week on 131, where now we can afford all this time to really just drill it down. We don't have to be worried about, okay, this guy's gonna pick us here. How do we do it this year? We just focus on what is the ABCs of playing a big composition? What is the XYZs of playing 131? What's the 123s of team fighting? We're just revisiting once again, then refining our early game setups and opportunities, which is something that we, once again, didn't really have the time to go into to map it out. What options does the jungler have, right? Are we always defaulting into clearing 6 camps, into 4 camps, into ganking? Or can we be more creative? 3 camps into gank mid, into invade, into then diving a side lane. Health and performance is also something that we want to be working on, looking at how diet relates to focus. And when it comes to habit building, now that we have this whole 6 weeks, we will be able to have a full 21-day period where we can talk about how do we instill habits in terms of the way that we respond to things, the way that we interact with things. Because once again, this is backed up by science that it takes about 21 days to build a habit, for your brain to grow new synapses, to grow the associations that can then make something a regular routine, and as well as establishing strong learning practices for the players to be more effective in developing themselves as a whole. And with that, this is the 5-4 recap as we finish up the first round robin of the NA Academy 2021 Spring. I'm really relieved that we managed to qualify for Proving Grounds despite all the challenges that we have had. If you enjoyed this video and want more of my recaps to figure out what's been happening, and sometimes I release some content, especially now that we're going to be doing all this learning, I will be sharing, right? Like what are the ABCs of how to play these compositions on my YouTube channel. So do consider subscribing to my channel and liking this video, and have a nice day.